Hi everybody, Vinton from Vinton Live Cash Poker Coach bot with you, doing an analysis of a high stakes hand that went down between Garrett and Andy sometime in the past. Let's see what our chatbot and our coach tells us and what its feedback is and how effective it is at coaching. Just an example for you, a little demonstration. In this video, Garrett is on the button with 51,000 effective and Andy has 126,800, roughly about 127,000. The game is 50-100 plus big blind $100 ante.
Garrett gonna open the button here, and he's gonna get called, or 3-bet from Andy.
Okay, so we plug in our hand into the Vinton Live Cash Poker Coach. We tell it that this is a high-stakes game between two super poker professionals. This is a 5100 game with a $100 big blind ante. One player, his name is Garrett. He's sitting on the button with Jack 7 of spades, and he has a stack of 51,000. And he's in the small blind with Ace of diamonds, Queen of clubs, with a stack of 127,000 roughly. The action folds over to Garrett on the button, who opens for 300, and Andy from the small blind 3-bets to 1,300, and Garrett calls. What do you think of the action of each player so far? Pre-flop actions taken by Garrett and Andy in this high-stakes poker hand are within the realm of strong, aggressive play for experienced opponents in this kind of game structure. Opening with Jack 7 of spades on the button is reasonable play for a player of Garrett's caliber. Button raises are common and generally include a wide range of hands due to the positional advantage. With a stack of 51,000 and blinds at 5,100 with a $100 big blind ante, Garrett's raise to 300 is standard open that applies pressure on blinds while maximizing his position. Jack 7 of spades has good post-flop playability and the potential to make strong draws and flushes, which further justifies the open. Andy's decision to 3-bet 1,300 is also strong and reflects a strategic play consistent with high-stakes cash poker game. Ace of diamonds, Queen of clubs is a premium holding in this scenario, and by 3-betting, Andy looks to isolate the pot and assert control. Given that he's out of position for the rest of the hand, a 3-bet serves to thin out the field and either take the pot down pre-flop, or if Garrett calls, maintain initiative going into the flop. Andy's deep stack of 127,000 further supports this play, as he can afford to be more aggressive and use his stack depth to exert pressure. Garrett's call with Jack 7 of spades shows that he's willing to defend and play post-flop against Andy, likely due to a mix of positional advantage, his skill edge, and the implied odds offered by both stack sizes and the hand strength potential of Jack 7 spades. This call suggests Garrett believes that he has enough maneuverability post-flop to leverage his position and potentially outplay Andy. The play-by-play by both parties is standard for high-stakes, deep-stack cash games. Garrett's open and willingness to call a 3-bet from the button indicates a wide range, incorporating hands with implied odd or board coverage post-flop. Andy's 3-bet with a strong but not premium hand in the heads-up pot shows willingness to dictate action and put pressure on Garrett, especially when considering he has the stack depth to back up future moves. Both players' actions align with fundamental strategies of applying aggression and maximizing position, particularly in dynamic, high-level poker setting.
1,200.
Man, what a flop we have here.
We're going to tell our chatbot that flop is Jack of clubs, King of diamonds, and 7 of clubs. Andy bets 1,200 and Garrett calls, and pot is now 5,100. And it returns by saying on the Jack of clubs, King of diamonds, 7 of clubs flop, let's break down the play and analyze the actions of both Andy and Garrett. Board texture and player ranges. Jack of clubs, King of diamonds, 7 of clubs. This is a relatively dynamic board that offers potential flush draws, straight draws, and strong mate hands, top pair and 2-pair possibilities. It's important to note that this hits both players' ranges well, especially since Andy 3-bet pre-flop and Garrett called in position. Andy's bet of 1200 into 2600, less than half pot, is a continuation bet at a relative small size. This type of sizing serves several purposes. Andy, as the pre-flop 3-better, is representing a strong range here. King X hands, Ace X Queen X, Ace X King X, and strong club combinations are all in his range. He maintains the betting lead and exerts pressure. King of diamonds and jack of clubs interact well with a typical 3-bet range, suggesting that Andy should have King X, Ace King, Ace Queen of clubs, or even strong overpairs that opt to 3-bet. By betting small, he keeps in worse hands and potentially induces calls or raises from weaker hands. Range balance. His bet size suggests that he could be betting with value hands like Ace King, King Queen, or strong flush draws, as well as bluff hands. Garrett flop bottom pair. This is a very strong holding in this board, though vulnerable to flush draws and straight draws. Rationale for the call. Garrett's flat call makes sense for several reasons. Raising would inflate the pot on a board where flush draws are possible, and he risks being re-raised by a strong value hand like Ace King. Sets or flush draws that Andy could hold. By calling, he keeps Andy's bluffs and worse hands in. Position. Garrett can take advantage of his position, making it easier to navigate the turn and river based on Andy's continued aggression or any potential scare cards that could fall. Garrett's Jack-7 2-pair is strong but not invulnerable, as there are many turn cards, clubs, Ace Queen, that could shift the board texture and bring in flushes and straight threats. Andy's range remains fairly wide after his c-bet, potentially containing strong hands like King X, sets, strong club draws, or even Ace X Queen of clubs holdings. By just calling, Garrett ensures the pot doesn't overly inflate while maintaining some control over the action. This is crucial since he can force tough decisions if a club, queen, or ace hit the turn, as it could dramatically change the relative strength of his hand. Andy's play, solid c-bet that leverages his position as pre-flop aggressor. His bet size is well chosen to keep control of the pot while also putting pressure on Garrett's range. Garrett's play. Strong and disciplined call with 2-pair. Raising may lead to facing larger bets or an all-in on a potential draw. Raising may lead to facing a large bet or an all-in on a potentially draw-heavy board. So calling allows him to reevaluate based on how the turn plays out. Pot is now 5,100, setting up for a meaningful turn decision that could further clarify each player's hand strength and intentions.
Andy flopping a very good board for his range from the pre-flop 3-better's position. Andy can have all the jacks, all the kings, all the ace king, or all the king jack suited. Andy's going to keep firing here with the gut shot, blocking the strongest King X that Garrett can have. Very wet board. Garrett is just going to elect to continue calling.
Turn is now 9 of diamonds. Andy bets 3,200. Garrett calls. Pot is now 11,550. The board is now Jack of clubs, King of diamonds, 7 of clubs, 9 of diamonds. The board texture becomes more connected, but doesn't change drastically for flush draws. It introduces straight potential with Queen 10 now completing a straight, though neither player is especially likely to have Queen 10, though it's possible in Andy's range. The lack of clubs also means the flush draws remain incomplete. Andy's bet of 3,200 into 5,100 is a little bit over 60%, representing a strong hand or semi-bluff. Here are key considerations. Value hands. Andy continues to represent a strong range that includes hands like King Queen, Ace King, or possibly a set of kings, jacks, or even King Jack, if he chose to play them aggressively. The turn sizing indicates that he could be targeting weaker King X hands, 2-pair combos, or is building a pot with strong draws. Bluffs or semi-bluffs. It's plausible that Andy could be using his sizing to barrel with hands like Ace X Queen of Clubs, Ace X Ten of Clubs, or even Ace X Queen X if he picked up equity with an open-ended straight draw. Additionally, Ten of Clubs, Queen of Clubs is a strong draw that would make sense for a double barrel, even though it would already be the nut straight on the board. This turn bet is likely designed to put maximum pressure on Garrett's middling strength holdings like single pair hands, weaker two pairs, while also extracting value from weaker hands that are still calling. Garrett's call with Jack of Spades, Seven of Spades continues to make sense, but it's becoming more delicate given the changing board and Andy's aggression. Garrett still has a strong hand, but he must consider several key points. The turn card introduces additional draws, especially Queen 10 for straights, and doesn't improve Garrett's hand strength relative to the board. If Andy has Queen 10 or stronger two pairs, Garrett's behind. By calling rather than raising, Garrett keeps in Andy's potential bluffs or semi-bluffs. Raising would inflate the pot and potentially commit him against a range that could include stronger hands or force him to fold weaker hands. Andy's larger turn bet can often signify strength, but Garrett's position gives him an advantage in seeing how the river action plays out. He likely expects that if Andy slows down or checks the river, Garrett can make better decisions, either going for value or showing down his hand more safely. Garrett's approach highlights the risk of playing a large pot with two pair against a potentially polarizing betting range. Calling allows him to keep the pot size manageable, while still potentially extracting value if his hand remains good. Andy's line represents a combination of value and bluffs. His continued aggression indicates a willingness to bet hands like top pair, top kicker, sets, or strong draws. His exact range will depend on his bluffing frequency, hand reading ability, and image against Garrett. Andy's bet, his $3,200 bet, consists with a high balanced approach of value and strong bluffs applying pressure to Garrett's calling range. Garrett's call. Defensible given his holding of Jack of Spades, Seven of Spades, but it must be approached with caution due to the connected nature of the board and the increasing size of the pot. The pot is now $11,550. The turn action sets up a crucial river decision, with Garrett needing to decide whether to continue against further aggression or make a value bet if checked to. Andy's next move, as the river card is revealed, will be pivotal in revealing the strength of his overall line.
With two pair here to protect his calling range. If Garrett raises all of his strong hands here, he doesn't have any good hands to call down with when Andy runs big bluffs. Andy just gives up on this river, which seems reasonable, having the club and the diamond in his hand. Makes it more likely that Garrett has a value hand and not a draw. Garrett's going to go for some value here.
10 seconds.
Just under a pot-sized bet from Garrett on this river. Andy thinking about it with ace high. He can't love having the queen of clubs in his hand specifically, blocking some draws like queen 10, blocking some club draws. And Andy's going to move all in. Andy is going to turn his hand into a bluff and move all in.
Okay, moving on to the river. River now is a four of spades. Andy checks, Garrett bets 10,000, and Andy jams, putting Garrett in a tough spot. Okay, now the board is Jack of clubs, King of diamonds, Seven of clubs, Nine of diamonds, and Four of spades. The river card appears relatively inconsequential in terms of changing the board texture. It doesn't complete any obvious draws like flushes or straights. This makes 4 of spades more of a blank, preserving the relative strength of hands such as top pairs, 2 pairs, or sets. Andy's check might indicate that he's looking to induce a bet from Garrett. If Andy holds a strong value hand like a set, top 2 pair, or even a well-timed bluff catcher, he may prefer to let Garrett fire a bet, potentially turning weaker made hands or missed draws into a bluff. Andy might also be controlling the pot in case he holds marginal made hands like King Queen, King Jack that can't handle a large bet without risking a check raise bluff from Garrett. But given the subsequent actions, this seems less likely. Garrett's bet of $10,000 into a pot of $11,550, representing a large bet, roughly 86% of the pot. This sizing is significant because such large bet typically indicate a polarized range, either a very strong hand or a bluff. Garrett is representing a hand that can confidently go for value, such as Jack 7, bottom 2, potentially King Jack, or even a bluff if he senses weakness from Andy's check. By betting $10,000, Garrett could be trying to extract value from strong top pairs, King X, weaker 2 pairs, or possibly even attempting to fold out hands like Ace X Queen of Clubs, misdraws, weaker Jack X, or induce a hero call from Andy's marginal hands. After Garrett bets $10,000, Andy responds by check raising all in, effectively putting Garrett to a decision for his entire stack remaining $46,500. This move strongly represents a nutted hand or a bluff. With limited room for middling strength hands, given the board, Andy is representing extremely strong value hands such as sets, 2 pairs, that is stronger than Garrett's likely range, Queen 10 for straights, bluffs. Given Andy's check raise all in, it could be a well-timed bluff semi-bluff if he had a missed club draw like Ace Queen of Clubs or 10 Queen of Clubs, now representing a huge hand to force Garrett off his holdings. Andy might recognize Garrett's large bet as a polarized range and use the all-in check raise as a bluff, attempting to leverage the threat of an all-in spot to push Garrett off hands like Jack 7, King Jack, or even weaker 2 pairs that are unlikely to call such aggressive line. Garrett's tough spot. Garrett must now decide whether to call or fold the rest of his stack, effectively $41,000 more into a pot of $71,550, giving him nearly 1.7 to 1 pot odds. Garrett holds Jack 7, which is a strong 2 pair, but it loses to hands like sets, King Jack, Queen 10 for a straight. Given the sizing and the line, Garrett has to determine if Andy has enough bluffs in his range to justify a call. Andy's potential bluffs may include busted club draws or creative plays, but it's a high-risk spot for Garrett since calling and losing means he's effectively felted. Andy's play. Given his check raise all-in is strong representation of a polarized range, if he truly holds the nuts or near nuts, the line makes sense to maximize value against Garrett's perceived strong bet. Alternatively, as a bluff, it's a powerful play that leverages Garrett's likely range and could force a tough fold. Garrett's dilemma. Garrett's large bet indicates strength, but the check raise all in forces them to question if Andy is bluffing or truly has the hand he represents. Pot odds may tempt a call, but given the stakes, it's a high variance decision with significant implications. Garrett must weigh the likelihood of bluffs in Andy's range against strong value hands. So Garrett starts tanking in this spot for what seemed like forever, at least 5 or 6 minutes, and we'll get back to it once he makes his decision. Garrett ends up calling, so let's find out if this was a good or bad call. To determine whether Garrett's call was good or bad, we need to reevaluate his decision from both theoretical and practical perspective, considering the information available and the line taken by both players. Pot odds and equity considerations. Pot size. After Garrett's 10,000 bet and Andy's all-in check raise for Garrett's remaining 41,000, the total pot size is approximately 115,550. Garrett must call 41,000 to potentially win 115,550. Pot odds. Garrett is getting roughly about 2.82 to 1 on his call. This means he needs to be correct roughly about 26% of the time to break even on the call. Assessing Andy's large range. Value hands. Andy's check raise all in on the river strongly suggests a polarized range representing hands at the very top of his range or a well-executed bluff. Value hands he could have include sets, jacks, kings, or even sevens. These hands make perfect sense given his pre-flop 3-bet and post-flop aggression. Each of these hands beats Garrett's top 2 pair. Straights. Queen 10 is a potential holding, though less common given the pre-flop action. Still, it cannot be discounted entirely, particularly if suited. Top 2 pair King Jack. While this is less common in a 3-bet spot, it's still a possibility. It would play this line for value against weaker 2 pair like Garrett's Jack 7. Bluffs. For Garrett's call to be good, Andy needs to have enough bluffs in his range. Potential bluffs could include missed flush draws. Andy may have chosen to turn a hand like Ace X, Queen X with a missed draw or Ace X 10 into a bluff, though these hands would be less common given the line he's taken. Garrett's hand strength. Jack 7, bottom 2 pair, is strong but vulnerable in this situation. It beats bluffs and some single-paired hands, but loses to a lot of value combinations that Andy might take this line with. Garrett does not hold any significant blockers to flush draws or straights, which could slightly increase the chances of Andy having a bluff. However, Garrett's 2 pair blocks some of Andy's potential value hands like Jack X combinations. Psychological and exploitative considerations. Andy's check raise all in on the river after Garrett's large bet strongly represents strength, particularly given the deep stacked, high stakes environment where major bluffs are risky and can be costly. Garrett must determine if Andy's capable of pulling off such a bluff or if this line screams strength and value. Table dynamics. If Andy has been known to bluff in big spots or use aggression to pressure his opponents, this might tilt the decision in favor of calling. On the other hand, if Andy typically plays a more value-heavy strategy, the check raise should be taken more seriously. A good call or a bad call? The reasons it could be a good call. Garrett only needs to be correct about 26% of the time to break even. So if Andy has enough bluffs in his range, the call can be justified. If Garrett believes Andy is capable of making big bluffs with missed flush draws or creative holdings, calling makes sense. Andy's river check raise all in is polarizing, meaning he represents either a very strong hand or nothing. If Garrett correctly assesses that Andy's range has a significant number of bluffs, then calling can be profitable. Reasons it could be a bad call. If Andy's range is heavily weighted towards sets, 2 pairs, or straights, Garrett is in a losing spot almost always. Given the way the hand played out, Andy's line looks extremely strong and may contain more value hands than bluffs. Lack of blockers. Garrett doesn't hold any significant blockers to the draws that could make up Andy's bluffs. Example, no clubs or Queen X cards, meaning Andy's bluffing frequency could be lower than Garrett would hope for. If Garrett loses, he essentially felted, whereas folding preserves his stack for future play. High-stakes games often reward stack preservation. Conclusion, the call assessment. Garrett's call depends on his read of Andy and how often Andy is capable of running a massive bluff in this spot. The line Andy took is very strong and usually indicates significant value hands, suggesting Garrett is behind more often than not. If Garrett has a strong read that Andy can be bluffing frequently or overrepresents the strength of his hand, then the call may be justified. General evaluation. In the absence of concrete reads on Andy being bluff heavy in these situations, Garrett's call is likely marginal at best and potentially negative EV. Given Andy's line and the strength he's representing, it leans towards being a bad call, as the number of strong value hands outweigh the potential bluffs in most cases. However, if Garrett is correctly assessing Andy's propensity to bluff in these spots, it could be seen as a high-risk but calculated call. So I hope you enjoyed this analysis by our chatbot. I think it clearly lays out the hand, analyzes it, and gives you a very good idea of what transpired and how close these guys were to playing their best game and dominating each other and putting each other in these tough spots, and how they navigated, what factors they consider, and therefore you should aspire to play at these levels. And if you do so, you can get the coaching you need with this absolutely free poker coach. The link is in the description. Feel free to use it. Give me your feedback, share your comments in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.